Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features the Uncanny X-Men number 283, cover dated December 1991. So this is quite a striking cover by Whilce Portacio, inking himself on this as well. We've got Storm facing off against Bishop, an interesting three-quarter profile from behind on Bishop's face here. And look at the strength of the muscle and strength of that particular arm as they're facing off against each other. And we've got the cover caption, Bishop's Crossing. So in this issue, we're going to learn a lot more about who Bishop is after his sudden appearance at the end of the previous issue. So let's open this one up, and the captions indicate that we're picking up barely a heartbeat since the end of the last issue. So we see Bishop's colleagues, Randall and Malcolm, attacking various of these criminals from the future who've come through one of Trevor Fitzroy's one-way time tunnels. And let's open up these pages here, where we've got this pretty big anchor image of Bishop. He's got his hand on Fitzroy, whom he grabbed at the end of the previous issue. And then we've got Malcolm and Randall here, having grabbed a few of these future criminals too. And now Bishop is determined to send Fitzroy and the criminals through the time portal. But we've learned in the previous issue that those time portals are one way, and anyone who attempts to go back in will be destroyed. So Fitzroy buys some time and makes a request that someone else go through the tunnel first. So here we have Randall pushing this guy through, and of course he is torn apart by the one-way tunnel. And Fitzroy laughs sadistically at what happened. So Bishop is horrified and concludes, "The blood I must spill is all on your head," because Bishop orders on this double page half splash that Malcolm and Randall lock and load and stand by for a termination sweep of all the future criminals, because he's not going to allow them run amok in, well, for him, the past, and for us, the X-Men's present. So Storm is appalled by this, and Fitzroy's criminal colleagues from the future turn on image inducers so that they disguise themselves as Fitzroy, and then they attack Bishop, Malcolm and Randall. Here we've got our creative team. Pencils and plot by Whilce Portacio, inks Art Thibert, words by John Byrne, letters Tom Orzechowski and Lois Bohalis, and colors by Joe Rosas. And I like this kind of starburst effect here, and the magenta around the edge of the time tunnel. So let's continue with the issue here. So Bishop and Malcolm and Randall start dealing with these ersatz Fitzroys, as the real Fitzroy here makes his escape. And Storm realizes from what some of these criminals are saying about the future, it makes her wonder, is that the explanation? Are these strangers from the alternate timeline we X-Men have struggled so long to obliterate? That being the timeline of Days of Future Past, detailed in Uncanny X-Men 141 to 42. And she continues, "But we know so little of that time. This man, Bishop, his uniform bears the mark of the X-Men, and he seems totally unaffected by the laser-like blasts of that mutant, or maybe something else." But Bishop explains that he is not unaffected. He has absorbed this character I-Beam's power, and now he returns it. So that is Bishop's power. We learn in this issue what his power is, how he absorbs energy directed at him and returns it in kind. So we get a full accounting of his mutant power in this issue. One other point to note, which is although Whilce Portacio is the main creator of Bishop, this is John Byrne's one contribution to Bishop's story. That is to say that Byrne establishes that Bishop comes from a few decades after the Days of Future Past time of 2013 that we saw detailed in Uncanny X-Men 141 and 142. So now Bishop is taking on Colossus, or rather Colossus takes on Bishop. Not exactly the most dynamic punch here, drawn by Portacio. It looks like more of a smack or an elbow that he gives Bishop, but it creates this damage on the plaster of the wall there. So there's a suggestion that it was quite a punch, but it just doesn't look like it in the drawing. And at this point, Bishop hears Colossus talk about the X-Men, and now it's interesting what he says here, where he thinks it's some kind of trick, because we're going to learn that for Bishop, from the future he comes from, the X-Men are legends, and he reveres them. So meanwhile, Trevor Fitzroy is making his escape, but he's suddenly captured by these guys who zipline into his base, his Arctic base, and they abduct him. And it turns out that these are operatives for Shinobi Shaw, who is a rival of Fitzroy's in the Upstarts game. And we're going to learn a little bit more about the Upstarts game in this issue as well. So here we have this, I like this page here, where Bishop is wondering about whether this really is Storm, this really is Iceman, this really is, well, he doesn't seem to be familiar with Archangel, but he is familiar with Angel's face, and that makes him doubt. No, it's a trick, isn't it? He says. Exactly the kind of cruel joke I should have expected from your Lord Fitzroy. Well, it isn't going to work. I won't let my love of the X-Men legends stop me destroying you. So he continues his attack on the X-Men, using this restraining cuff on Colossus, which snaps Colossus back suddenly to his flesh and blood form. And even though Colossus protests that he really is Colossus, as Professor X named him, and that they really are the X-Men, Bishop is unconvinced, and he tells him your charade begins to border on blasphemy. So that just gives you an indication of the level of worship and reverence Bishop has for the original X-Men of our era. And then we switch back to Storm here, who is ordering the others, including Iceman, to target Bishop as prime target. And Iceman responds, you got it, boss lady, but then he whispers, though somehow I think Cyclops would have twigged to that long ago. So a little recognition here that up to very recently, Iceman has been part of X Factor, the original 5 students of Professor X, and taking orders from Cyclops rather than Storm. And he's bristling a little here at Storm and his preference for Cyclops' style and competency of leadership. So nice little character bit there actually from Portacio and Byrne. And then we have Storm attacking Bishop with her lightning blast, and he is able to send it back at her. Absorb the energy and send it back at her. And then he's attacked by Iceman. And yeah, there's a lot of action in this issue. So we see his energy beams blasting apart Iceman's ice slide. Actually, no, it wasn't Bishop there. It was Malcolm who did that. And then Archangel attacks with his the blades from his wings. And here we have Bishop and Malcolm and Randall shooting at Iceman and Archangel. So really we have a battle royale here between Bishop and his colleagues and the X-Men Gold Team. And I like the way that Thibert has rendered here with dry brush, Storm's Hurricane. It looks pretty effective, and here again in this panel. So nice use of different inking techniques here. And then really she grabs Bishop's rifle and pins him against the rubble and tells him to shut up. And how she swears that if he has done anything to jeopardize their mission to aid Jean Grey, well, the implication is she is going to, yeah, maybe shoot him. And here now we switch scene to the Blackbird, where Professor X and Forge are aboard. And Professor X has had this hunch that Jean transferred her psyche into Emma Frost's unconscious comatose body at the end of Uncanny X-Men 281. And so it is the case. And now he's attempting to telepathically transfer Jean's psyche out of Emma's body and into Jean's own proper body. And just want to note here something. The way that Portacio is rendering this upshot under the nose, this is difficult to do, and he's doing it really well in this issue. There might be another one coming up with Bishop as well that I'll point out, but I like the way that he's doing this. As I said, it's difficult to do. And so Professor X works on the transfer, and we get this, again, an interesting way that Portacio is rendering this transfer of the psyche here. It's an interesting effect he's got going on here with the two noses and the suggestion of a splitting of Jean's psyche out of Emma's body. And then interesting little bit of dialogue here from the professor where he says, you know, he was successful, but for a moment it almost seemed another, right? That there was some, as Forge is worried here, if another psi were to try to interfere. And is this an implication that some other psi was trying to interfere? And who could it be? A vestige of Emma's psyche in her body, or someone or something else? And a problem here is the abrupt departure of Portacio from the title when he when he left Marvel to become one of the Image founders. And so we don't get a resolution of some of these little setups here as regards who this other might have been. And then we have Jean successfully back in her true body. And we switch back to the Arctic, which is this little monitor screen is showing this other aircraft that is leaving Fitzroy's base. So here we go, and aboard this is Shinobi Shaw, who has taken back his father's ring from Fitzroy, which he calls the symbol and rank of his power, and which he, in Gollum-like fashion, addresses here, "Did you miss me, precious?" Whether he's making a joke there, whether it's Byrne making a joke through the dialogue, still it's nicely done. And then we see Shinobi Shaw with these other characters who are part of his grouping, and they all are a little dressed like new romantics, actually, in this particular scene here. And it's interesting that we never see these characters again. And again, something to do with the upcoming abrupt departure of Portacio in order to found Image. And something I always note is I like the way Joe Rosas uses the colors to suggest, as he's doing here, clouds. And also, let's see, oh yeah, and I like the way that he's just shot these purple stripes to give a sense of the plane that the characters are standing on, even though Portacio is given no floor background here. But I like it, it works, it's effective design. So Fitzroy protests his abduction and Shinobi Shaw taking the ring from him, and he demands the arbitration of the Gamesmaster. So this is a new character coming in. And the Games Master renders his verdict via a computer monitor. Master Shinobi, we find in your favor. Signs it off there, Games Master. We're going to see the Games Master on the final page of this issue. And then we have Shinobi Shaw and his colleagues toasting their success and the fact that they've laid explosives in Fitzroy's base, Arctic base, and the whole place is about to detonate in 20 seconds. But Fitzroy swears that he will get his revenge, and as long as he lives, he'll do everything in his power to bring down Shaw, to make the leadership of the Hellfire Club his. And then we switch back to the Arctic, and Storm, still with the gun leveled first at Bishop's throat, then at his belly, where she's quizzing him on why he wears the emblem of the X-Men. And Bishop responds, "I wear what I earned in a lifetime of combat, of fighting, to deserve the dream of Charles Xavier." And that's not answer enough for Storm, like the use of geoshade here in the background. Also something to note is on an earlier page, we got to read the insignia on Bishop's shoulder. I'm just going to flip back to that here. Yeah, here it is. So Xavier's School Enforcers, just slightly obscured there by the speech balloon, but that is what is embroidered on the badge on Bishop's shoulder, and the same with Randall and Malcolm as well. So then what happens is those explosives laid by Shinobi Shaw's agents start detonating, and Storm creates a pressure dome that keeps her and her team safe, while Bishop and his guys make their escape. And Bishop here says it frustrates him to run away with no clear victory and no clear idea who these impersonators are. But Randall and Malcolm basically say there's always tomorrow to discover that. And again, here's Joe Rosas with this nice designy background suggested by the use of purple there. I like it. And then we have Storm and her team with the injured Colossus making their exit, as Storm is also determined to find out more about Bishop and why he is wearing the X-Men's emblem. And she continues that point here, makes the point to Professor X with Jean and Forge listening, where she says, "This man Bishop has touched a nerve. He's a most formidable force, and I cannot rest until the questions he raises have all been answered." And then here's our last page. And so we see what the Games Master looks like. And he is addressing this figure in silhouette, whom he addresses as Lady. "This has all been most invigorating, has it not?" he asks her. And her response is, "Indeed it has. And one cannot help but wonder how much more so it will become when my unwitting upstarts learn the true nature of our little game and the actual prize for which they all strive so mightily. Then, Games Master, then will the game truly become interesting." Now, at the time I first read this, and this 283 is the first issue of Uncanny X-Men I bought off the racks. My first X-Men comic ever was X-Men #1, adjectiveless X-Men #1. So by this point, I decided I needed to have the sister title as well. I didn't know at the time that it was the original title, but I soon discovered that. So this was my first issue of Uncanny X-Men and my introduction to Bishop and also. But when I got to this page at the end, I had no idea who this is. So it's only subsequently do we learn that this is Selene, Black Queen of the Hellfire Club. And in the X-Book continuity, the last time she had been seen was New Mutants number 75, which had been penciled by John Byrne. So Probably readers who were a couple of years reading the X-books would recognize her, but at the time I had no idea who she was. So there you go. And let's see, there's a letters page here and a little close-up here on Angel, Archangel rather, by Portacio. So pretty good stuff. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 283, Bishop's Crossing. If you did, please like the video, and if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.